What we'll be showing during this video, using the assembled layout from the Halloween No. 2 project, we will quickly customize it with VCarving. We will also show you how to create basic tooling for that layout. For this demo, we're going to use VCarve Pro 8. It's important to note that the tools that we're going to use in VCarve Pro 8 are available in VCarve Desktop and also Aspire. So this tutorial can be used across the board for all three pieces of software. So the first thing I want to point out is that when you open up either of those pieces of software or any of those pieces of software, you're going to see two quick links down here, one to designandmake.com and one to VectorArt 3D. If you click on those, they'll bring up your internet browser and take you directly to whichever one you click on. So in this case, it's designandmake.com. So you can go over there, you can look for inspiration for your next project. You can go ahead and download new content if you'd like, and so on. If you click on the VectorArt 3D button, you'll be brought over to vectorart3d.com, and you can purchase individual models to use or to hack into your projects. Just make sure that you buy the proper version for your software. If it's VCarve Pro or VCarve Desktop, it's the V3M. If it's Aspire, then you've got a choice. Okay, let's minimize that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new file, and we're going to make this file 12 by 14. We have a 1-inch piece of material to use. We're going to put our datum in the center. We're going to use inches. We're going to use a very high resolution, and we're going to click OK. We're going to go over and click on the clip art tab. Now this is the place where you're going to find all of your installed clip art. The first folder is the clip art that you received when you installed your software, whatever came free with the software. And if you've installed any Design and Make projects, you'll find them in the Design and Make folder. Now on your PC, when you run the installer that you get your project with, you'll see that the very last screen will give you a path, and that path is your C drive, users, public documents, Vectric files, and that's where that is your default Vectric clip art library. So in this case, in the Design and Make folder, I'm looking at the Halloween No. 2 project, and in this project, you'll see all of the individual models, which is the bone hand, the marquee sign, the masquerade mask, the skull, the tombstone, and the top hat. Also the assembled layout, which is called assembly. And then there is the project page. If you double click on that, that's the project page that you get for inspiration, some help on some layouts, and maybe some other neat little tips and tricks and ideas. Also, in this particular case, I've downloaded some of the extra content off the Halloween No. 2 project page, and that's the 2D cracks with the cracks project sheet to help you out with those. So it's good to kind of, as a housekeeping tip, put those into your project file so you know where to find them. So we're going to go back to VCarve Pro, and I'm going to click on Design and Make, and I'm going to scroll down to the Halloween No. 2. And you'll see that in this bottom section, all of the models that came along with the project have little icons, little thumbnails, and then there's the assembled layout. In this particular demo, we're going to use the assembled layout, so I'm going to double click on that, and VCarve Pro will put it right in the center of my job space. I'm going to dynamically size that up, holding down the Shift key and grabbing on one of those handles. I'm going to size it up to approximately the size that I want it to be. This is the way I generally work with CNC projects. I do it all dynamically. I don't put in a whole lot of numbers until I need to check the vital ones. And in this case, I do need to check an important one. I want to make sure that this flat surface or the highest point on this model is at 3/4 of an inch tall. So that way, out of my 1-inch material, I'm going to save a 1/4 inch of that as backing to make this project more rigid. So in order to check that, I'm going to go ahead and go over to my drawing tab. I'm going to tile my view, so I've got the 2D view and the 3D view at the same time. And then I'm going to go to my modeling tab, and I'm going to click the spanner or wrench. And that'll bring up the component properties for this particular component or model. And the shape height of this right now is 0.59, so 0.6 of an inch, and I'd like that to be 0.75. So we're going to make this 0.75. Press the spacebar. And VCarve Pro will go ahead and scale it up for me, so I can close that down. Now there's another way to get to that properties tab, and it's a little nicer and a little easier. If you go ahead and click on a selected piece or model in your 3D view, up will pop this dark blue properties button. So if you click that, you'll get this floating property dock, which you get access to your shape height, your base height, the combine mode, your tilt and fade. So that's kind of handy to have just kind of floating around, so it's easy to get to. So now I like the size of that, and the shape height is perfect. So let's go to our drawing tab, and we're going to lay out some text on this. So we're going to click on the draw text. We're going to start out with RIP, rest in peace, pretty standard text for Tombstone. We're going to use the Candera font. I think that's how you pronounce that. We're going to make sure it's bold, and we're going to click apply. VCarve Pro has rendered the text for me and plunked it right in the center of my job. So I'm going to press the close button. I'm going to select the RIP text, and I'm going to use my cursor keys to jog it up, straight up, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key and grab one of these corner sizing handles, and I'm going to size it up. Now if I don't hold down the shift key, it's going to size it from the top right corner, and because I'm using the bottom right corner, sorry, the top left corner, because I'm using the bottom right corner to scale it with. But I want it to scale from the center, so I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to make it roughly the right size I want it to be. I'm going to nudge it into place with my cursor keys again. Maybe hold down the shift key and make it a little bit smaller. That looks good there. And now I want to bend that text around the top of this skull. So we're going to use the edit text spacing and curve. If I select that, then these two green handles, seeing as I had that text selected ahead of time, those green handles will show up, and I can just pull that up so that it roughly follows the top of my skull. I can press escape when I'm done, reselect that, and then nudge that down into place where I want it to be. That looks great. Now I'm going to click off of that so that my text isn't selected anymore, and I'm going to create some new text. So I'm going to click the draw text icon again, and we're going to put the name of the deceased person. So Manny, M-A-N-N-Y, Bones. And we're going to use the same font. We're going to make sure that it's bold, and we're going to click apply, close that down, and we're going to nudge that using our cursor keys again down a bit. We're going to reselect it, and we're going to scale it up just a little bit. It looks perfect. That's great. Now, to make this a little more spooky, we're going to take advantage of those crack vectors that I downloaded. So we're going to go back to our Windows Explorer. And there's a couple different ways you can bring in vectors if you'd like. One, you can go to File, Import in your vectors. But in this case, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to drag from our Windows Explorer right into our 2D view, and in will come the cracks. Now, it looks like nothing happened. That's because the cracks are really big. So you can see one of them is selected right here. If I zoom out, there they are. I'm going to zoom back in again. And I'm just going to press, or I'm going to go to the size, set selected size of object, or I can press T on the keyboard. So I'm going to press T on the keyboard. Oh, sorry, I want to do that. We'll use T in a minute. And we're going to type in 5 in there. We're going to click apply, and there they go. Now that's a little bit small, so we're going to go ahead and select that, and we're going to press T, and that set size pops back up again. So we're going to make that to be about 7 inches. Click apply, slide those out of the way, just off our workspace a bit here. Close that down. And then if we off click them and we click one of them, you'll see that we can now select them individually. They didn't come in as a group, they came in as individual vectors. So now we can just go ahead and we can drag those on top of our layout. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click it, and then we're going to hold down the control key. And if I hold down the control key, it will make a copy of that. If I didn't hold down the control key, then it would just move it. I'm just going to rotate that around until I'm happy with its position. That looks pretty good. I'm going to hold down my control key again, and I'm going to copy that. It's always good to have the original copy up top there so that we can always come back to it if I need it. That's great, and we're going to go ahead and grab maybe this guy here. We're going to hold down the control key. We're going to rotate that around. We're going to scale it up just a hair. We're going to put that like that. Now I'm trying to avoid any high drop-offs. Like for instance, if I put a crack vector along here, because there's a high drop-off here, there's a chance that your cutter might hit the edge of your edge of the highest part and mar it. So I'm trying to avoid that right now. That might not be so bad. These are cracks, so they can look kind of organic like that, but for other things, you might want to avoid that. That's great. So we're going to go ahead and delete these extra ones. Now we're going to create one more vector, because in the end, we're going to need an outline vector to do all of our tooling from. So we're going to close down this properties dialog, and we're going to click, we're going to select our tombstone. We're going to go to our modeling tab and we're going to click the create vector boundary from selected components. It didn't look like it did anything, but if I off click my model or component, then I now have an outline vector already created. So that's great. So now let's go ahead and do some very basic tooling. So we're going to go ahead and press F12 on the keyboard, and that'll bring up our tooling tab. If I press F11, it will bring back up my modeling tab, so you can toggle back and forth between those two using F12 and F11. Or you can go ahead to your drawing tab and you can click right here and switch to toolpath tab. And then you can click down here to switch back again to your drawing tab. So we're going to press F12. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our material. So again, because we told VCarve Pro that we had a 1-inch material at the first, then it's automatically filled it in for us. Our datum set to the center, which is great. Now we're going to make sure that we put our layout in the proper position in our material. So you can use the slider bar to put it wherever you'd like. I suggest that you jam it right to the top. So the top of this box is light brown. The light brown represents, of course, your layout, and the darker brown represents the material that's left over, or what they call the gap. We want to make sure that the gap is at the bottom. That'll leave that 1/4 inch to help stiffen up our project. And this information here you're going to have to set based on your machine. Click OK. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a roughing pass. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill for that. We're going to use our selected outline or selected vector. So we're going to use that outline that we created earlier. We're going to have an offset boundary, so we're going to overshoot that by a 1/4 inch. We're going to leave behind 0.04 inches of material so we can come back and take that off during our finishing pass. And everything else looks good. So we're going to go ahead and calculate that. And we recommend that you preview each toolpath as you go. If it doesn't look right in your preview, then it's definitely not going to look right on your machine. So we're going to go ahead and preview that visible toolpath. And that's looking pretty good. Perfect. So close that. And then we're going to go to do our finishing pass. We're going to use a 1/8 inch ball nose end mill. We're going to make sure we use that selected boundary, which is still selected. And we're going to offset that again by a 1/4 inch. And we're going to use an offset strategy, and we're going to calculate that. It's going to take a bit for VCarve Pro to calculate. So what this is going to do is going to go back and remove that 0.04 of an inch of material off the surface of the roughing pass so that we will reveal our finished carving. So just go ahead and preview that. So it cleans up quite nicely. You'll see that the cutter gets in pretty much everywhere it needs to get. There's no obvious spaces it's missed, which is a pretty decent layout. Let's close that down. The next thing we're going to do is going to be our VCarving. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select all of our vectors in our 2D view. And we're going to click on our VCarve toolpath. We are going to leave this all the way it is because we're going to project this onto our 3D model. So these aren't important right now. We're going to use our 60-degree cutter, which is great. That's perfect. And we're going to project that onto our 3D model, and we're going to calculate that. Let's preview that. Let's look straight down on it. Looks pretty good. And then we're going to close that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do our cutout pass or our profile. We're going to use a profile cut to do that with. So we're going to select that outline again. Go to our profile toolpath. Now this is an important little piece to remember, is that you need to set up your cutting depths properly so you don't waste a lot of time just cutting in the air. And in this case, we know that our layout is 3/4 of an inch thick. So our first pass is going to be at 3/4 of an inch. And our cutting depth, the remainder of our material, is a 1/4 inch. So these two added together should equal the thickness of your material. If they don't, then you've got a problem. So you want to make sure that those two add up. In this case, they add up to 1 inch, which is perfect. We use our end mill again. And we're going to add in tabs. Tabs are important so that when you're done doing your profile cut, your project doesn't fly out of your material and hurt your machine, or worse, hurt you. So we're going to add in some tabs. We're going to edit our tabs. And we're going to add in 4 tabs. When we click Add Tabs, VCarve Pro will make a good attempt to put them where it thinks we want them, but we're going to move those around to spots that we feel are a little better. And generally they're on straightaways so that the tabs are easy to cut out when we want to remove them with our saw. If you put them like in here, it might be very hard to cut out. So we're just going to put it on there somewhere. That's great. And we're going to go close, and we're going to go ahead now and calculate that. And let's preview that. And there you have it. So there's our finished preview of all 4 tool paths. And when this is all done, we'll pop it off our machine, use our bandsaw or a saw to cut those tabs, do a little sanding there. You should have a perfect sign to finish for your front lawn for this Halloween. Important note, if you plan to create tooling and run it on your CNC, make sure that you use values for the material setup and for the parameters of each toolpath that are safe and appropriate for your CNC machine, the tooling you have available, and whatever material you are planning to use for your project. What you just saw in a nutshell. We used the Halloween number 2 CNC project. All design and make projects are delivered as a Vectric installer. How easy it is to use the assembled layout and VCarving to create a final layout, create basic tooling, and some projects come with extra free content.